Hello and welcome. Today's podcast is targeting the financial, legal and property sectors. I'm Chris White, Head of Cyber and Innovation for the Cyber Resilience Centre for the South East. And today I'm joined by David Lawrence, who's a Senior Partner from Eric Robinson Solicitors based in the South. Hello, David.
Good afternoon. Nice to hear you again, Sir Chris.
Yes, many thanks. And we also have Sean, who's the Communications Manager for the Cyber Resilience Centre as well. Afternoon, Sean.
Good afternoon.
So without further ado, we'll crack on with the questions. I guess what makes this sector so attractive to cyber criminals? And David, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll deal with that. What are they all after at the end of the day? They're after money. And unfortunately, there's a lot of it sloshing around in law firms. And it's frequently the case. Solicitors firms are frequently dealing with high value property transactions, residential or commercial, which necessarily involve the transmission of large sums of money between lawyers, their clients, mortgagees, and so on, which of course makes them very vulnerable to intercept by the unscrupulous. So, if you were intent on securing money through illicit means like that, why not target large sums of money and therefore lawyers?
I totally agree, and quite often I do see the crime figures coming in for the southeast of England, and there are sadly solicitors' office and estate agents on there. Sometimes there is a bit of a pattern I can see in a trend where they might be ambushed on Friday afternoon for those house sales that go through, and then there might be less people in the office on the weekend when things go wrong and sellers and buyers don't receive the funds that they were expecting. But certainly I do see evidence of something called business email compromise, whereby you can compromise an email account and then intercept it with those dreaded "and here's my new bank account details." And people amend and edit those details without picking up the phone, doing what I would class as due diligence, checking with the office, checking with the person on a separate form of communication to the one that you received the change request to. So making it sterile. I guess you wouldn't be offended, would you, if I phoned you up on a Friday afternoon and said, "I've just had this email in saying that Eric Robinson's changed their bank account. Is that right?"
I'd welcome your call. And guess what the answer would be?
I know. I think it's quite a pain, isn't it, for a business to change its bank account? You wouldn't just do it unnecessarily.
No, you would do that as rarely as you possibly could, because it's not just to do that. There are so many organisations that you have to advise in relation to that kind of thing, and just the admin, the red tape is just a real pain. In fact, when it's happened before, the inquiries, the double checking can last for months after it's happened.
Wow. Do you have you seen any examples then where businesses have experienced attacks or incidents like that?
I'm not aware of any personally, but I know that they are an all too common occurrence from reports that I've read about through the Law Society Gazette and newsletters from the Solicitor Regulation Authority and so on and so forth. But I do know from personal experience that phishing attempts and so on are an all too frequent occurrence. My firm will probably get something which looks to be suspiciously like a phishing attempt that gets through our firewalls and systems probably at least once or twice a week. In fact, indeed, I've had one only myself during the course of this week so far.
It is crazy. And I know from the data that I see, so we talked about phishing. Phishing's a bit of a technical term, but it's, I guess, scam. For those of you who don't understand phishing, and then we've got smishing and vishing. So phishing is scam by email. Vishing is scam by a voice phone call, and smishing is scam by text, and that got its name from SMS back years ago. But certainly phishing emails come in. I think there's about 156 million going around the world every day. The technical filters will stop the majority of that. So spam reports, spam emails, they end up in your junk inbox. But certainly I think it's about 20% of those will get through the technical filters, and then they're going to be opened by a human who will review it. And hopefully if they're a little bit apprehensive over it, they might ask for a second set of eyes to come and have a look at it and say, "Do you think this is right?" What would culture be like in, I guess, what you've seen, David, in relation to members of staff that just don't have that reassurance that this email is correct. They would go and ask, they would go to the IT team. Is there any sort of advice that you give people?
Lots. We give cyber training as part of the induction when any new starter comes in anyway. And we have a policy of training the staff regularly and then beating them over the head with it with more training on top of that all the time, because you can't have too much training here, because the mantra is correct. You are as strong as your weakest person. There's no question about that. So there's all sorts of things to keep an eye open for. You're going to be protecting bank account details in the way that you've described, Chris, earlier on. But also when you're giving out your bank details, you'll be perhaps password protecting it or encrypting it if you have the ability to do so. And in terms of phishing, then the staff training will hopefully enable them to identify the typical sort of signs that you get. A typical phishing email will maybe either piggyback and look like it's a genuine email address from somewhere else, but very often hovering the mouse over it reveals something rather different. Sometimes a domain can effectively be hijacked and very minimally changed so that it looks as if it's your own, but in fact isn't. Other things to watch out for. It is astonishing that spellings are often poor, grammar is poor, and they just genuinely don't look like they've come from the real person. That's perhaps not surprising, because a large number of these phishing incidents, I believe, Chris, actually do emanate from abroad. So perhaps where English is not the first language. So it is partially explained.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. I mean, I noticed you mentioned about security awareness training for your staff, and when a new member of staff joins, if we talked about the dreaded GDPR recommendations, and the Information Commissioner's Office suggests, well, in fact, they say it's best practice that if you have someone that joins your organisation, they should have cybersecurity training within 1 month of joining, and that organisation should have an annual refresher programme in place to support all staff in cybersecurity. We all get emails, whether we're at home or work, phishing emails offering us things that are out of the blue and too good to be true. They usually are. There's not normally a prize at the end of that trail. But yes, training is really important, but the culture where if someone's just not 100% sure, they should have the ability to sometimes challenge the senior directors in a company, because it could be David emails the finance team saying, I need this payment done this afternoon, otherwise we're going to have our electricity turned off, for instance. The people that are going to make the actual payment should be confident enough to come and speak to people like yourself, the senior partners, and go, is this right? Did you really send this email? So give them the confidence to come and approach you to say, I think something's wrong here, without, I guess, that fear factor.
Yes, you're quite right, and I'd like to think that they all do feel that way. Well, indeed they would, because they know perfectly well that I'd probably be the one complaining if they didn't.
And you're definitely right in what you said, that your staff are your first and last line of defences. They're the first to see something wrong, and sometimes they're the last time to stop it going wrong.
Yes, and they know if that happens, the first thing to do is to report it to our IT team.
Good stuff. So are there any common or trends or themes that you see other than phishing emails? Do you tend to get any sort of social engineering, people pretending to be others, trying to get money out of the office if they phone in?
Not telephone calls. We haven't. No, there has been very rare occurrences where we've had certainly a couple of incidences where partners' email has been piggybacked, for want of a better word. I'm sure there's a technical word for it, but emails purporting to be from them but which aren't, much along the lines of the example you gave about two accounts paying the electricity bill or something like that. That sort of thing has happened.
So when we talk about Law firms, solicitors, banks, accountants, they're all formal practices that all basically handle people's money and important transactions that we all rely on. What are the day-to-day things? Could you name a couple of things that you've done or aware that the sector's done in specific just to improve their cybersecurity?
Well, yes, you certainly need some proper security measures in place. You need some quality firewalls and other software that's associated with that to try and block out as much as you can, because the examples I give are already good, but these are the ones that actually get through. There's hundreds more that never get through, of course, that are stopped by these processes, which is good news. So it's only those that get through that I'm actually really talking about in terms of how to deal with it. So you have to train the staff to watch out for the unexpected, watch out for the poor spellings, the grammar, the attempts to impersonate colleague, watch out for address corruptions. As you highlighted earlier on, Chris, I'm from Eric Robinson Solicitors. Our email addresses are ericrobinson.co.uk. We have had an incident where somebody sent an email purporting to be from Eric Robinson's with an S on the end .co.uk, which fortunately our staff were alert enough to spot, and that's been quickly disposed of. That was a while ago and hasn't been repeated. But I know other firms have had similar things and they've not been so lucky and they've not spotted it. So invariably there's a link there somewhere or other for you to open, and who knows what comes as a result of that. It could be malware or something like that, or indeed it could be just an information gathering exercise to secure information which enables them to access accounts, bank accounts or other details.
I mean, just going on what you just said about Eric Robinson Solicitors, you're Eric Robinson Solicitors. Top tip for people out there that I've seen, that you have a look at your own website name and see where the weaknesses could be in. So you've purchased Eric Robinson Solicitors, you could consider also purchasing Eric Robinson Solicitors, and then you get that domain protection. So for everyone else that's listening out there, have a look at your website name, and where you could see that it could be impersonated, you could benefit from buying up that other obvious domain where someone could try and do that and then impersonating you, and then you potentially remove that headache in the future. You don't actually have to have anything on that website, because you just have an auto direct back to your main genuine website. So if someone lands on either of them, they always end up going to your genuine one. So it's just little tips that I've seen out there dealing with the job so far. I guess one of the easiest things is, I know people are eager to, when they go out and buy new laptops, that they open up the box, plug it in, turn it on, because they're quite happy to get up and going. I know we saw a lot of that, didn't we, during the recent pandemic, where people were all moving from the office and working from home, and a lot of IT equipment was purchased necessarily to undertake work at home. But what were the steps that you would take in your organisation to make sure that brand new laptop is up and running, it's safe and secure and supporting the needs of the business?
Well, it's a good example, actually, because as a firm, we did not at the time of the pandemic actually have a particular policy of working from home. So it was a completely new experience for us when the order went out. And of course, we didn't have that many hours. No one had many hours before they had to be in that position. So like so many, recognizing this, we did rush out and we bought a number of laptops from the only supplier we could actually find any, because so many were being bought, and they weren't really suitable for the job, but they had to do. And we did make the very best we could of them for the duration. Because that has to be better, having a dedicated laptop, than simply just having third-party access on a piece of home computer or something like that. But anyway, we have done that. But now the pandemic having settled into where it is now, a few months ago, we actually did call all those laptops that were bought in a hurry back into the office. They've been replaced with something that is a bit more up to the job that we want of it, and are effectively now quarantined and disposed of those old laptops that were bought a year ago, 18 months ago, at the time of the pandemic, simply because they're not suitable for the job we want them to do. And we've sold them to the staff for personal use.
So I think what you've described there is a really good example, is that the organisation's made a positive decision to go and buy some equipment. There was an onboarding policy, and someone with IT responsibilities, and I know whether it's small, medium, with big companies that you might have in-house IT security, or it might be outsourced, but you certainly set up the computers with policies to prevent staff from doing certain things and allowing staff to doing business critical things. Examples I've seen of best practice and bad practice. We finish our working day, and because there's not enough devices at home, the works laptops are then used by the children of the house to surf websites. Could be innocent things like YouTube and watching videos, to other websites where there could be the facility to download malicious software. In cases like yours, David, I'm sure that the laptops would have been set up to disable and disallow employees to download any software that they want.
Yes, that's broadly right. We do have that. We do have a policy along those lines, a written policy to which all staff sign up. And yes, access to various sites, including social media, for example, are disabled. So it's not possible to do that via our devices in that way.
Some companies do start that process, and they're called honour policies, where you tell staff what they should and shouldn't do. And then other companies take that next stage where it becomes a technical policy. So, I don't know, we sometimes have dishonest staff, or sometimes staff panic and do the wrong thing, and they just go and do what they wanted to do. But a technical policy prevents them from doing that and keeps the device or the machine or the laptop safe. Is that something which you've experienced as well, where you tell a member of staff and then you actually technically prevent them from doing it?
We tend not to give them that option, in fairness, because the moment they come into service, they are already geared up so that they have access denied to various things straight away from day one. So yes, there is a policy that we do restrict it, access for surfing and so on, but the staff know not to take liberties generally, and in the most crucial ones they can't.
Good.
It's not possible.
And again, I guess real life examples that I've experienced is that staff will still use things like USB sticks, memory sticks, or plug USB cables in to charge their phones. Say, for instance, the phone has a virus on it. You transfer the virus via the cable into the laptop, and then the laptop will just spread around the organisation and then cause all sorts of disruption. So some of the basic security measures which I would definitely recommend as part of the Cyber Essentials scheme is turning off USB. So only those that need functions or privileges have access to it, and everyone else that doesn't have a business need for it, it's turned off. So your IT team, when they're doing installation procedures, will be able to download software, but someone in sales or the HR department doesn't have that facility because they don't need it to undertake their business role. So I guess we call it least privilege principle. Those that only get what they need get it.
It makes perfect sense to my mind. We do have a policy that plug-in USB sticks, that kind of thing, can't be used. Whether they are actually prevented from use, I lack the technical ability to know whether that's so or not, but certainly it is our policy. Good.
And then in relation to a disposal policy, so we talked about machines were new, now they're old, and you're replacing and you're upcycling devices that they're all wiped. They're not just given away.
Of course. They're factory reset and so on and so forth, yes.
Good, because we've seen again examples where you have the printer scanner copiers in the office, for instance, that have gone past their best before date and then they're sold. But people forget that in a printer scanner copier, there's normally a hard drive which could hold a whole amount of sensitive data of no matter how many documents you've scanned over the lifetime of it existing in your office. So it's the importance of having a disposal policy as well. So yes. I guess we could move on slightly a little bit. We spoke about remote working and the vulnerabilities, and Have you got any examples of when the challenges that staff are faced in your sector when they work from home?
Yes, it is very difficult. I didn't do a lot of working from home during the COVID pandemic. That's largely because some of the work that I did meant that I was classified as a key worker. I've always thought that was a slight fraud, but whoever thought of a solicitor as a key worker? But there you go. So I have been in the office, and it has made quite a big difference to being hands-on and going to know and keeping an eye on what's going on in the business. But those who have, yes, because of course these days working in your office, you're not working on a laptop. You're working there with a printer, a scanner, twin screens that are screwed to the desk, and so on and so forth. So there's a right palaver moving stuff around as well. So that has been difficult. Of course, there are remote access issues. There's a matter of keeping the software up to date that fits with the mainframes and so on and so forth within the servers within the business as a whole. And there have been, I think there were at least two occasions during the course of the pandemic where everybody who had equipment at home needed to bring it in so it could be updated and kept where it was. All of these things are possible, but it is difficult to do, and it's time consuming and it's a pain. But rather that than run the risks.
So I can agree with you. Computers sometimes are a right pain, but
Yeah.
Flipping it on its head, how would your business cope without computers?
It wouldn't. It's as simple as that. In common with most firms these days, we are slowly migrating away from paper files. There are a large number of types of work that are done within the office that are held electronically only. Now, there is no paper file, so without computers, that work A couldn't be accessed, and B, well, potentially wouldn't exist because it would have to be recreated from scratch as a paper file. So it can't be done anymore.
Right. And I mean, of some of the stats that are out there, I guess, Sean, over to you just for a little bit of the statistics of a snapshot of where do we see the sectors at the moment?
Yeah, so a recent report by the Solicitors Regulation Authority revealed that actually 75% of the firms included in that report had been a victim of a cyber attack. The report also covered that cyber criminals had directly targeted those clients during a legal transaction. Now, as you know, and you're probably well aware, those legal transactions can be of really quite significant amounts of money. We're talking people here that are sort of involved in the transactions of completing with houses or for business perspectives. But I think one thing you always kind of forget about is the insurance arena as well, and kind of the money that comes into play in terms of that type of fraud. So it's really quite powerful when you think about the kind of basics that can be done in cybercrime to help prevent these things go slightly wrong and help prevent that middleman, who shouldn't be the middleman, getting in the way and causing a problem. So, I mean, all you have to think about 75% is a significant amount. And then you've only got to look at other sort of news articles out there, and there's a report from PwC who estimate that actually financial institutions are over 30% more likely to be targeted than any other business. And you can see why. And you can see why the data is as high as it is when the money that these businesses are transferring and are handling themselves do cost and are so much. So it is a very, unfortunately, attractive market. But much like other industries, there are some really, really simple things that can be done. So it's really good that we're kind of going through the motions of discussing those today.
And I guess putting a conventional aspect on it again, the financial sector has made it very difficult for me to go and rob a bank these days. But if I then want to try and electronically go through their firewall and be the man in the middle and take their money, I think that's going to be far easier than the good old days of robbing a bank.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an example that comes to mind, and actually it was sometime last year where I was nearly victim to a sort of PCP finance fraud on a car deal, and essentially they'd done some clever or not so clever basic social engineering, and had put the dots together using information that was available online effectively about myself. It's not too hard. I do own my own business, and unfortunately there are things like Companies House that give away the basics, which are incredibly frustrating. But what it meant was that these cyber criminals who were acting on behalf of a fraudulent company were trying to get money out of people who had previous PCP deals with this, or the victim company, if you like, and were trying to fool ex-customers into thinking they had money left to pay. So it's quite easy, really, for that man in the middle not to have to physically rob a bank anymore or rob the insurance company. They can use the customers to do so and actually still generate the money. And quite sadly, the company that were involved didn't even know they were involved until I told them. So it's sad to think that you can become a victim when the company that effectively you're getting penalised for using don't even know that they've also become a victim of it. So it's a big circle and not a very nice one to be a part of.
Thank you for that, Sean. That was very insightful. I think we're probably going to draw this session to a close now, but I'll probably ask just both of you for any final top tips for all the small business that are out there, in relation to the people that work for them, the processes that they have to keep the business running successful, and maybe the technology that they provide their staff to use safely. I guess, David, you got any final top tips for people listening in today on cybersecurity?
Yeah, there's a few things I would certainly recommend. The first and most important one is be alert. Always be alert about the emails you get. Just be naturally suspicious about everything and everyone. Make sure that even in the slightest doubt, don't open any links. Look at it, check it. There are things you can do. Hover your mouse over the address, and as I say, stay alert. If you're in any doubt whatsoever, even if it purports to come from an official source, indeed, there's an argument for saying, especially if it seems to come from an official source these days, then double check it. I make no apologies for the fact that I've actually been suspicious about genuine emails that I've received from the legal aid agency, and I've queried it with them, and I've even pointed out that they don't look very good, bearing in mind GDPR, cybersecurity, etc., but they have proved to be genuine. But it's very important to do that, and alongside that sits the training of your staff to be alert in a similar way, and to make sure that they are sufficiently empowered, that they are confident to be able to question whether particularly an in-house email or contact has indeed come from that person as opposed to outside the business. So that's very important. And then if all else does happen and you do suffer some form of attack, then it's very important to spend some time in advance having created yourself a business continuity plan, because if your computers are down, your business is down, and it needn't be like that. And the fourth tip I've got really is don't panic, because you do need a clear head for this kind of thing.
I guess practice.
Correct.
We do the fire drills. We've done it since we wore shorts at primary school, didn't we? And now we're quite comfortable. No matter what building we go in, we normally take note of the fire routes, the escape routes. And then when we get a little bit older, we've all done first aid, haven't we? So if people become ill unexpectedly, we generally know how to respond. But with computers and cyber, I don't think we're quite there yet. That a lot of people will panic because it's just nervousness, isn't it? They just don't know what to do next.
It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah, dead right. So practice makes perfect, doesn't it?
It does.
Sian, anything from yourself just for closure?
No, nothing more from me apart from become a member of the Cyber Resilience Centre for the South East, and we can help you on your cyber journey.
Thank you very much.